Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Nova Lux. Nova Lux is brought to you by Dragon Egg Games. It's for 1 to 6 players, ages 14 and up, and games take about 15 minutes per player. In Nova Lux, you will take charge of a federation of orphaned alien species that have escaped a dying star system in the wake of a galactic apocalypse. The universe is winding down, entropy is increasing to maximum. You will need to manage your precious resources through trade, conflict, and exploration that will sustain biological life and power your Ark of Salvation, hydrogen converters, and Biosphere Engine, all while building a star colony that can outlast the end of the universe and give it new light. So your goal here is to gain 7 or more of each of your resources: life forms, plants, water, artifacts, and hydrogen. So you can establish a colony and then be the first to complete all 3 of your faction card objectives. To set up the game, the first thing you're going to do is to create your solar system. You'll take all your star cards and create this 4x4 grid. Now, it's important to note that when you lay out this grid, you need to leave enough space between all the cards, because as you travel across this universe or this galaxy, you will be using the space between each of the galaxy cards. And then, based on the player count, you will destroy a number of these star cards, flipping them face up. These can range from things like black holes to gateways and things like that. Now, you will take a deck of the red stars. You'll shuffle them up and you'll place them, for all the non-destroyed stars, you'll place them face down on the grid. And then, likewise, you'll take the yellow stars. You'll shuffle those up and deal them out face up on top of the red stars. So you're building this layers of potential stars as the stars collapse and so forth and destroy that particular section of the galaxy. Now, each of these face-up yellow stars have a starting hydrogen level. You'll place cubes on each of them showing their starting position. And each player is going to receive a reference card as well as their player card with a colony disc and their ship cube, all in matching colors. And then you'll place cubes for all your resources, starting with level 3. Now, at the start of the game, you're going to be drafting cards. These are your faction cards, and they have a couple different purposes. And based on the player count, will determine how many of these cards get put into play to draft. But you'll end up with 3 at the top of your player board. Now, these cards have actions that you're going to be performing across the top of each card. And again, these are going to be varied and do a lot of different things, but obviously they're all around resources for the game. You might be trading resources one for another, things like that. And at the bottom of these cards is your objectives that you have to complete throughout the game. Things like having enough resources of a certain type. You might have to have 14, or you might have to be in a situation where all the other players have less than 7 of a particular resource. Lots of different things that you need for these different types of objectives to complete in the game. And then finally, all the players will put their spacecrafts out into the galaxy. Now, on your turn, there are 4 available actions, and you can do all of these, and you can do them as many times as you want, as long as you can pay the cost. So you're going to be moving around the galaxy is one of the big ones. So as you move off a star, it is a gravity well, so you're going to move off into deep space, which is in between the stars and the different card tiles. So that will cost you 2 hydrogen because you are breaking gravity there. And as you move into a new star, it only costs you 1 hydrogen because you're moving closer to a gravity well. Now, the thing here is, so as you move between these, it's really going to cost you 3 hydrogen every time you move from one card to the other. But thematically, I like the fact that you're moving into deep space and breaking away from that gravity well. Now, if you're in an empty tile where there is no star, it costs less, and there's also a black hole to be aware of. If you have to break the gravity of a black hole, that costs you 5 hydrogen. Now let's take a look at harvesting, because you are going to be harvesting the hydrogen off of these stars. You will move the selector down by 1, but you don't spend hydrogen. You bleed hydrogen off the star. And then you look at the middle of the card, and in this case, we're going to spend a water to get 1 hydrogen and 2 life forms. So all the cards are very different on how they handle resources. Sometimes it's an either or that you have to spend in order to get the bottom type of resources, but there's always a trade-off here. You're spending resources to get resources, and it's a bit of a puzzle as you move around the galaxy and try to figure out which cards that you want to use the most and bleed hydrogen off of. Now, if you have a card that has 1 hydrogen left, you'll bleed it off and do the appropriate resources that it calls for, but you also get to collect this card and put it near your player board. We'll take a look at what that means in a minute. Also, underneath the card that you depleted of all its hydrogen, you'll see there's a red star. Basically, the star turns into a red star, and you'll flip it over, and these cards are going to be even more advantageous for getting resources, but they are critical. They're going critical, so you got to be aware of that. But you set that card up with its starting hydrogen as well. And then if you bleed off a red star, again, you collect the card like you would. It's important to note, as you collect these cards into your play area, this is the start of building your engine for getting resources. You can ever only have 3 cards, but you can swap cards out as you play the game. Destroying the star actually destroys that star system. So you'll take that card underneath and flip it over. It could be a black hole that appears. All kinds of things can happen throughout the galaxy. Now let's take a closer look at your biosphere. These are the cards that you've been collecting from the stars that are depleted out in the galaxy. So this is your own biosphere. This is your own engine you're building in your play area where you can collect resources. Now the difference here about collecting these resources is the fact that you still have to pay the cost in the middle of the card at the top to gain the resources at the bottom. But instead of gaining hydrogen like it calls for, you will be spending hydrogen as well. So it's a little bit more of a trade-off, but there is an engine to be built here in order to do some really neat things with your resources and also to gather the right cards in the right combination as you travel throughout the galaxy. Now, if you're on a star with another player, you have 2 options here. You can trade, and that's really just a negotiation. I'll give you 2 of this for 3 of that, or 1 and 1. However you so choose to trade resources, you can fully do that. Or you can attack. Attacking involves each player rolling a die and taking that value and adding it to their lowest valued resource. And whoever wins is going to be stealing resources from the other player related to the difference in the die attacks and the total values. So it's a really interesting trade-off as you decide, I'm going to trade, I'm going to attack, I'm going to steal, be a pirate, whatever. But that's another possible action you can perform on your turn. All right, now let's take a look at these faction cards, because across the top, there's all kinds of actions you can perform. Some might have you teleporting to different locations. Some are going to allow you to gather resources when others do, or you can trade resources one for another. Or you may get benefits from attacking. So this is a reason you would attack instead of trade, because it might give you a bonus resource like an artifact in this case, or water, or something else. So those actions are going to really help you throughout the game, and they may even aid you in some of the objectives that you have at the bottom of the cards. And then finally, at the end of your turn, you will collect 1 hydrogen. So those are the basics of a turn, but throughout the game, you're trying to gather at least 7 resources. That's your first step to winning. And then you can place your colony marker wherever your ship is out in the galaxy. Then beyond that, you're trying to complete the objectives at the bottom of all your faction cards. And again, these are going to be like needing 14 of a resource, or forcing others to have less of a resource, or you might have to do something with the black hole or be somewhere between a star tile and a black hole. So those are all things to keep in mind as you complete those objectives. And the first one to do so will then be the ultimate species in the galaxy. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, with that said, there's a lot of gameplay here in a tiny box, bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And there's a lot of give and take on how you spend resources and how you gather them and how you build up that Biosphere Engine in your play area. It really matters. And I like the puzzly nature of the game overall. Really interesting. And there's a bit of back and forth between players, and actually the trading is an interesting negotiation in the game as well. And they've really done a ton for the backstory on this game. There's even a graphic novel they're going to have that ties directly into it. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it for me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.